What is happening, eighth graders? Here we are. It's Saturday, and it looks like the smoke outside is really, really causing a great haze. So let's think about those people who are suffering from the fire, and if you have time, say a prayer for them. As you can see behind me, as I move back, 1620. 1620. What happened in 1620? Well, that was supposedly when the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. And then right near my head is a picture of Plymouth Rock. My goodness, we make such a big deal about this big rock. I was thinking a big, huge rock, but it looks like it came out of the backyard of somebody in California. But Plymouth Rock, well, let me tell you something about Plymouth Rock. Did you realize that the Pilgrims never referred to Plymouth Rock in any of their writings or songs or, the history we hear about it? It wasn't actually until, I believe it was 1715, that they referred to the Great Rock, meaning Plymouth Rock, and there it is behind me. And not until 1741 did it actually become the area where they landed, because I really don't think they know where they landed. But what's his name? Elder France declared this Plymouth Rock, and then this is where the Pilgrims supposedly had landed. Now, when you're talking about the Pilgrims, we have to talk about John Winthrop, who the great Puritan leader. And when you think about him, you think about the quote, "As a city upon a hill, the eyes of all people are upon it, or upon us." And that's like from the Sermon on the Mount in the New Testament. And if you were a Puritan, you would have known right away where that came from. Puritanism then is like Christian charity today, I guess you would say. And the perception that the Puritan community in New England was very, very free and religious loving, and they were, but they also had their ways of ruling their community. Pilgrim Hall, now when we talk about, the Pilgrims, in 1824, the Pilgrim Hall Museum opened up in order to preserve the history of Plymouth and to tell the story of the Pilgrims in that colony. The museum's collection actually includes possessions of Pilgrim settlers, such as Bibles owned by William Bradford, and he was the longtime governor of Plymouth, and like a Standish Daughters emblem, whatever that is, and a sampler of other little things that the Pilgrims actually, left behind, I would imagine. So if you have a time, go find the Pilgrim Hall Museum in your book, and also look at it online. It's kind of cool. It was by the late 1600s as that area started to flourish and stuff. We got to talk about witchcraft, and witchcraft had been a part of European culture for many years. In England, witchcraft had been a capital offense actually since the 16th century. Capital offense means not going to be around much longer. The government followed suit in condemning those who believed in Satan, and during the 17th century, Puritan governments in England, New England, accused more individuals of witchcraft than did any other English colony. The Witchcraft Accusations all happened, as we know, in Salem in the 1690s, and fell on the prosperous church members, a minister, a wealthy ship owner, several town officials, as well as women who had to who were about to inherit property, I guess you could say. And So it wasn't so much about witchcraft as it was about power and land acquisition. Um, we think about the kind of ways that they punish people back then, and they tell they hanged the people for witchcraft, and they used the pillory. The pillory was it was like a platform, wooden. It was topped by an upright board, and the board was hinged or divided in half with an opening for a person's neck and wrists. You're like this. You probably can't see that, but and when the offender's head and hands were in place, the two parts of the board were tightened, and the person had to be in the middle of the town square in this pillory. And if you think about it, they put him in the middle of the town square so that they would look like embarrassed and humiliated. And oh my God, what did Mr. Caprero do now? So think about that. And as we go further into the colonization of the eastern seaboard, we talk about William Penn. William Penn, he is the quintessential good man. He founded Pennsylvania on the basis of everybody's accepted, no matter what your religion and whatnot. Unlike Maryland, who was a Catholic community who didn't allow Jews. So even though they allowed all other religions. So as we go on, Penn established an assembly with, inside there, his government. He actually established an assembly with two houses with elected males who owned property. That was always a big thing. You had to own property. And during the early times, servants received 50 acres at the end of their term, and nearly every man in Pennsylvania could vote. So he was, I guess, would be a liberal today. However, Penn did not extend the right to women, which is kind of funny because he did it for everybody, but not women. So he intended to make a fortune from Pennsylvania, but in this respect, the colony was a deep disappointment to him. Land sales reaped smaller profits than he was thinking he would get, and the cost of actually running the colony kept going up and up, and he went into debt. Although the province became really prosperous and quite successful as it is, Penn reckoned it a failure. So Penn had some lofty goals for the area. He based his principle of Pennsylvania on that all people were equal, which was very good at that time, because as you can see, we were meeting slavery and indentured servants. So in other areas, not everybody was considered to be equal. So equality was big for William Penn. As we move a little bit further, and we're going to go over the different regions and stuff. So we talk about the Iroquois Confederation, or the Confederacy, which was a confederacy in order to maintain peace and cooperation among the different Iroquois nations. So they put all these Indian nations together and created the Iroquois Confederacy. They tried, some of them, weren't very peaceful with each other, although the Confederacy got them to understand that they were fighting the same fight, and that would be stopping the Pilgrims and other people from the middle colonies and southern colonies from encroaching on their land. It was one of the most effective of all alliances when you base them upon all other alliances between Native American tribes. And probably because of its complex political structure, villages retained local control, and the chiefs ran those villages, and from the different nations came together to resolve conflicts and set policies against the encroaching colonists. tobacco was such a successful crop. Now let's move on to, tobacco was such a successful crop in the South, but unfortunately it was very labor intensive in order to plant, harvest, and cure this stuff. Seeds were planted in beds in the winter and tended until the seedlings grew, and they were able to plant them on hills and on farms, which was quite incredible because there was such a big demand for tobacco in Europe and in the West Indies. So we move on, and we'll talk about the province of New York. So when we're talking about the middle colony, let's start with, and we'll talk about this in class. Let's talk about the Massachusetts Bay Colonies, the colonies that are up in Massachusetts area. We have Massachusetts, obviously. Excuse me, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire. Did I miss one there? I don't believe so. And then as you move down to the middle colonies, you have New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And as we move into the southern colonies now, Maryland, right? Maryland, Georgia, the two Carolinas. What am I missing? It's 4. Oh, Virginia. How can you forget Virginia? And I probably missed one, but I didn't add them up. 8 and 5 is 13, so I got them right. So remember those 13 colonies. Not that it's a big deal in your life, but you should know it. When we talk about royal colonies are colonies that are kind of like ran by the king. It's he picks someone to run it for him, even though he's still in England. He picks people. And when you look at New York and you look at New Jersey and you look at some of these names are no other than British names that they threw the word New Jersey, new, in front of it. New York, New Jersey, New Hampshire, right? So, and a lot of the towns in the first colonies were actually places in England. So when we talk about New York at the time was New Netherlands, and it was run by Peter Stuyvesant, who was kind of like a tyrant, and he had one wooden leg, and he walked around, and it was at a time, and we'll talk about this in class, but the British were going to fight for New York, and they were going to fight the New Netherlands, and Stuyvesant was such a tyrant that nobody wanted to fight for him. So when the British had to come in and take New York, it was pretty simple. It wasn't that hard. And New Netherlands, obviously a Dutch colony, and very peaceful, and except for Peter Stuyvesant. A lot of the colonies were somewhat vaguely included claims. They said New Jersey and Delaware were all partial claims of the Dutch. In New York, the king gave New York, after they won it, he gave New York to his brother, the Duke of York, and I believe it was James. And the Duke of York obviously named it New York. So the Duke of York ran New York, but New York at that time ran all the way through down the middle colonies into New Jersey. So that got kind of too much to take care of by yourself. So he hires he takes a couple guys, friends of his, right? Carteret and Berkeley. And those two guys run New Jersey, and they set borders. And New Jersey is a proprietary colony, although it is a royal colony, it's a proprietary colony in which they cut up the land into small sections. They would rent it out, and those who farmed those little portions of land, who were able to get one, they would pay Carteret and Berkeley. Berkeley would pay York, and York would pay the king. So it's like maybe, the first rent. It was the first rent that we ever said. We had to rent land and things like that. So Carteret, if you go to Carteret, there is a Carteret, New Jersey, and I believe it was one of the first places claimed as the New Jersey. And it was funny because additional land owners started to build towns, and two of the biggest towns that came up were Bergen, and that's now Bergen County, New Jersey, which is right across there from New York. And I know that because it has Paramus is in Bergen County, and Paramus, okay, you want to know a story about Paramus? It is known for more shopping centers than anywhere in the eastern coast. And then Woodbridge, New Jersey. And Woodbridge, New Jersey is a wonderful place because all my relatives used to work there, or they grew up there, lived there, my dad. And it's funny, my two uncles lived there, and they were both football coaches. One was at Edison High School, one was at Woodbridge High School. And I mean, I'm talking they were there for years. And they played each other every year on Thanksgiving. And you had to pick a side on where you were going to sit, on Uncle Frank's side or Uncle Vinny's side. And if one lost and one won, it was crazy at Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, man, what a great time. But anyway, this is just a real quick boom. Here I am. Didn't forget about you. Little information. We will go further in depth about the colonies when we get to class on Monday. So just review this, a couple short informational things you need to know, and make sure you do your reading. You guys have a great weekend. Stay out of the air because it's ashy, and God bless you. Take care.